Hello there. Well, it's been a very wet couple of weeks and it doesn't look like things are going to settle down for the next couple of weeks as well, but it's not actually that long ago. You have to look back when we actually had some quite dry weather across much of England and Wales. So this map here shows a comparison between the first 3 weeks of September and then the period from the 21st of September through until the 15th of October. And it's a comparison of the number of dry days during that period as estimated by the radar. A dry day here being a day when there was less than 0.5 millimetres of rainfall recorded. So you can see this first period, the first sort of 3 weeks of September, much of England and Wales saw almost no rain at all. You can see these dark orange colours up to 21, 22 dry days during that period. So pretty much the whole of that period for some places was dry. You can see there was a slight wetting trend as you moved further northwest, but still much of eastern Scotland, northwest England, seeing around 10 to 12 days dry, and then less so further west in Scotland. Now that contrasts sharply with the period from the 23rd to the 15th of October. You can see lots of blue colours on this map, not really anywhere seeing more than 8 or 9 days dry during that period. And you can see some places seeing even less. Parts of Wales across East Anglia and the southeastern corner, some places seeing basically no or 1 or 2 days dry during that period, especially as we have that northeasterly flow bringing quite a lot of moisture, showers, bits and pieces of rain across East Anglia during that period. So a real stark contrast between the first half of September and then as we moved into October. And it looks like I said, this unsettled feel to the weather is going to continue over the next couple of weeks at least. This is the jet stream at the minute. Fairly active area of jet stream pushing in from the south during tomorrow. And you can see that they're pushing northwards across the UK. After that, we get into a little bit of a gap. Not a huge amount of activity. There could be a brief ridge of high pressure come through, but then some quite active areas of jet stream out to the west. You can see low pressure here, a brief ridge behind, but pushing various areas of low pressure in over the rest of the week and indeed into next week as well. So quite an unsettled looking forecast, I think, for the short term. Looking at a bit more detail, this is how things are likely to stand first thing on Wednesday morning. So we've got this little area of low pressure in the northwest bringing a few showers, spells of rain. You can see this more active area of rain moving into the UK out of France and across the Channel Tuesday night and into Wednesday. And through the day Wednesday, that's going to push northwards across much of southern eastern England before clearing out to the northeast into Scandinavia by the end of the day Wednesday. And I think it's going to be quite a wet period for many parts of central southern England. Some places could see up to an inch, maybe 25, 30 millimetres of rain. Other places seeing a little bit less, but a fairly widespread sort of 10 to 15 mil probably across particularly the southeast, but many central areas as well. This rain a bit patchier further northwest, but there still could be some hefty showers around over the course of Wednesday. Now things look like they're going to start the day on Thursday a little bit unsettled. We've still got this area of low pressure here for central areas, and that could bring some patchy rain through the morning on Thursday before that clears out and leaves a drier finish to the day under that brief ridge of high pressure on Thursday. But as you can see, overnight into Friday, another front pushing through, pushing some patchy rain southeastwards, followed by a blustery westerly showery feel to the middle part of the day on Friday. So a brief drier spell Thursday night and into Friday. That's looking like the driest weather, especially in the southeast, but another band of rain then pushing through during Friday. And once that rain clears, again, we see a brief ridge of high pressure build overnight into Saturday, but then another much deeper, more active area of low pressure and quite strong winds. You can see the tightening of the isobars during Saturday pushing through from the west. So that's really the story. An area of rain come through, followed by a brief ridge of high pressure where things might settle down for an afternoon or a day or so, but then another area of rain and strong winds coming through. And really that pattern continues over the weekend and into the early part of next week. That front, in fact, might stall across parts of southeastern England as well, so one to watch out for Sunday and Monday. In terms of spraying briefly, with the strong winds and rain around, there's not a huge amount of opportunities. There may be a few bits here and there, especially in some of the slightly lighter periods of winds, for example Thursday afternoon under that ridge, but you can see the tightening of the isobars there making the weekend not look great for that. There might be a brief period in the southeast before those strong winds come in, but generally not a great deal around. It's worth keeping an eye on any of the opportunities you can get and making the most of them. In terms of rainfall over the next 10 days, like I say, in the short term this week, we see these up and down periods where we get a front come through, followed by a brief ridge, then another front, a brief ridge, another front, brief ridge. So it's a bit up and down over the next few days, but like I say, you can see some quite hefty totals possible in some places. This is just an example for Bedford, but many places seeing, particularly on Wednesday, up to an inch of rain possible. Looks like the rest of the fronts aren't as heavy in terms of their rain, the amount that they're likely to bring, but even into next week, a lot of up and down spikes as these various low pressures come in. And the thing to note is here you can see the kind of the progression between a low and a ridge and a low and a ridge. Into next week, it's a lot messier because of the timings of these lows. This is a compilation of a lot of different model runs, and they're obviously all handling the timing of the rain quite differently. So expect these to sort of come together, and don't take any day-to-day forecasts for next week too literally as to the timings of the rain, as it's quite a lot of uncertainty and it might change between now and then, but we're definitely going to see some rain of some form come through. And as you can see, there's some quite hefty totals in places, and the average sort of washes that out a little bit. But I think it will be quite unsettled and fairly wet through next week as well. Now beyond that, and looking further afield across the rest of the UK as well, this here is the chance of a dry day. These green colours showing a very low chance of a dry day, and the brown colours showing a high or very high chance of a dry day. And you can see the next couple of weeks, not a huge amount in the way of those brown colours, mainly the greens, a lot of low chances of a dry day, a lot of rain around. You can see a few brief brown colours here where we get those ridges of high pressure come through, and that's where the kind of agreement on the timing of those is kind of fairly pinned down as to when might be the drier period, but really elsewhere looking like quite a wet period for the next couple of weeks. Moving into the early part of November, this top half of the graph is generally the north and west of the country, and you can see there's a lot of green colours still. Low chance of a dry day. We're going to see fronts continue to push across parts of Ireland, Scotland, northern England, parts of Wales, western England as well. So staying relatively unsettled there. Further south across the Midlands, eastern England, southeastern England, there are hints that once you get through to, say, the 1st of November, there's a lot more of those brown colours around. There's not a hugely strong signal at the minute. I don't think we'll see 2 weeks of solid dry weather, but I think there might be a bit more in the way of dry weather around. So looking at an increasingly promising picture into the early part of November if you're in the south and the east and you're after dry weather. Remember, you can get stuff like that, information like that, ensemble forecasts, probability forecasts, and much more on our online Weatherquest farming portal, as well as getting a detailed 10-day forecast for your location and the longer range monthly forecast. Now, if you want a 2-week free trial of this, drop us an email at info@weatherquest.co.uk, or you can fill in an online form on our website and we'll be able to set that up for you, and you can have an explore around and see all the useful information that's on there to help you get out and about on the field. So looking ahead at the forecast for the next 4 weeks or so, this is next week and across Europe as well. We've got this generally lower than average picture across the UK, parts of Scandinavia, stretching down into parts of the Mediterranean as well. That's split up by this Azores high ridging in from the west, and then this higher pressure out across western Russia, ridging into parts of Eastern Europe as well. And that's reflected in the rainfall as well, really. We've got across the UK, Scandinavia, parts of France, and these sort of central western areas seeing above average rainfall with the rain and showers coming through. There are hints of drier than average rainfall in western Spain with that high ridging in, and fairly widespread below average rainfall across eastern, some parts of central Europe as well. So there is a lot of dry weather around further east, but it's the western parts of Europe that are seeing those wetter conditions. In terms of temperatures, now further west, with those lows coming through, there are going to be a few milder days where we see, especially across kind of the UK and France, Spain area, where we do see some mild temperatures come through. But I think the overwhelming which kind of pushes this over to the blue colours is we do see some pushes of northwesterly air behind those areas of low pressure. So on average, generally below average temperatures in the west. To the east of that low pressure, we'll see southerly flow, a bit more in the way of warmer air coming up from the south. So above average temperatures across, particularly across Scandinavia, but across much of Eastern and Central Europe as well for next week. Now looking ahead into the week after, this area of high pressure across Western Russia and Eastern Europe begins to build further west. We see a big kind of linkage between these two. So a weak sort of area of high pressure across the UK affecting our weather, but still a sign of it there nonetheless. And that really brings a more settled feeling look to most of the European continent during week 3. So that's the first week of November when I talked about that more settled weather. We can see generally below average rainfall for many places. There are some areas around the Mediterranean where there could be some showery rain at times, so perhaps wetter there, but generally most of the places seeing a more drier and below average rainfall picture for that third week. In terms of temperatures, still some cooler temperatures lingering around parts of southwestern Europe, and elsewhere there's hints of above average, but especially so across Scandinavia and parts of northwest Russia. That's where the strongest signal for above average temperature looks to be. Now into the fourth week, that settled look to the weather continues across most of Europe. We get this high pressure across Scandinavia, parts of western Russia, beginning to look quite dominant really, extending further southwest across the rest of Europe as well. So in terms of how that looks in the rainfall, most areas seeing either white or brown colours, so below average rainfall. There's a few spots here and there where we might see something slightly above average, but generally it looks like that fourth week, the second week of November, has a more settled look to it with rainfall generally below average. In terms of temperatures, not a strong signal, but generally it looks like parts of Scandinavia and northwest Russia still keeping the above average temperatures there. A fairly weak signal for something slightly above average for Eastern Europe, but no real strong signal for them at this stage. So to summarise for the UK, it's likely going to stay wet and unsettled through the rest of October for much of England, Wales, Scotland and Ireland. There may be a few dry days under those slight ridges of high pressure to come through, so make the most of those if you're wanting to get out and about and doing stuff on the fields. But into the early parts of November, there are hints of something more settled or slightly less unsettled, particularly for the south and east, as we see high pressure becoming just that bit more dominant. So a promising outlook, I think, for the early parts of November for many of you who are after the dry weather in the south and east. So thanks for watching this week's video. As ever, you can keep up to date with the day-to-day forecast via following us on social media. And if you've got any comments, don't forget to leave them in the comments below. Thanks for watching.